Today, two of my favorite people join us on the podcast as they launch their new podcast, similar to what we do here on the Brewmance. What we do is bring people together for well-crafted conversation over a drink or two. Today, Malcolm Alexander and Ryan Hale join us. Their new podcast is called Unfiltered Gems. And this also means that really three of my favorite people are on this podcast because my main man, Mike Russell, is here with us as well, of course, as we are the Brewmance. Mike Russell, we grab a beer each week. What are we drinking this week?
You brought it in. I think this is Lady Brewmance find. This is Coachella from Valley Brewing Company, the Coachella IPA. And did she get this in Coachella? Where the hell did she get this thing?
Yes, we were in Indio over the weekend hanging out, and Amy saw this in a store. Was like, let's get this beer. Yes. So we're going to crap it open and see.
I'm all about that.
Exactly. We do have Malcolm. We do have Ryan with us. One of them has a beer. One of them forgot his beer. It's also like 10:30 in the morning when we record this, but that's besides the point. Malcolm,
that is so besides the point. That is so besides the point.
Hey, thanks for leading this off with calling me out, Rob. Only right.
And it's also very indicative of the Unfiltered Gems podcast, because that's what it is. It's pretty much an hour of me calling Ryan out for his insolence for an hour straight. So
me being accountable for my mishaps.
100%. So cheers and salute to you, gentlemen.
Thank you guys.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I'm not even gonna lie. Me and Ryan talked about this on the podcast the other day. This is just a Modelo. I really wanted to be like, I got this really cool black-owned brewery from Inglewood, and I didn't have a chance because California traffic's wild, so I wasn't gonna get up there yesterday to pick it up. So I'm on Modelo this morning. So
nothing wrong with that. We actually had Modelo. We talked to a chef a couple of weeks back. His favorite beer of all time is Modelo, so we had Modelo right here on the Brewmance podcast. Now I want to ask you guys though, because you're both young entrepreneurs under the age of 30. You have decided that in your 20s you want to go out on your own. This is a very ballsy decision for young people to make, yet you both did it. So what was that decision like to say, I trust myself, I'm just gonna go?
Man. Ryan, do you want to go? And the only reason I'm asking Ryan, just because I feel like, Ryan, I can't wait to hear your story, because I feel like you're definitely not new to entrepreneurship, but I just remember us having conversations during the pandemic last year about how you and I could be so entrepreneurial and really embrace that part of ourselves. I know for me, I never really saw myself having a day job. I always knew I was going to be entrepreneurial. I was doing work for my neighbors, invoicing them when I was 8 years old, taking trash cans in and out of their yard for $5 a month, like that. And I put that money, saved it up from when I was 8 to 15. I remember because right when I was about 8, I was talking about work with my dad, and I don't know why I'm 8 years old talking about work with my dad, but he told me what the term entrepreneur was, and he's like, well, young man, you got to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, spell that. What is that? I have no idea what that is at 8 years old. And he broke down what it is, and then we start talking about ways to make money, because I was just 8 years old, and I was the kid who you give me $1, I run upstairs, I put it in my piggy bank, and I'm I'm holding on to that dollar, you know what I'm saying? And I like earning my money. So with my dad's help, we were just fleshing around ideas, what could I do? Where I grew up in Corona, California, not everyone had a grass. Some people just had gravel. So I'm I can't go cut grass. The overhead of buying a lawnmower at 8 years old, I'm not going to go buy a lawnmower. Things I was thinking already. And he goes, what if you take people, everyone has a trash service. Maybe if you live in an apartment, even if you live in or a house, you got to put the trash can out on the street. So I did that for 10 clients on my block from when I was 8 to 15.
Nice.
So it was $50 a month that over the course of maybe 8 years or so, saved up for a down payment on a car. And I bought my Jeep when I was 15 years old. And, from there, there was always seeds. Even when I went to college, it was go do this one thing with journalism. And I was I hear you. I'm going to go do the completely opposite, different thing. And I'm just going to I've just always loved doing it my way. And it's at no slight to anybody doing it the way that they think is right, because we're all out here just doing what we think is right. And I'm one of those where I've always wanted to just do my own thing, and nothing but God is the only reason why I'm here. I tell you, because if the pandemic didn't show me anything, I was actually applying for jobs my first time in 5 years. Last year during the pandemic, I was well, if I'm not going to be DJing full time because we can't be outside, I got to do something. And we just stayed patient, and we're the busiest we've ever been now because people really want to party hard. So
no doubt.
Yeah,
I saw that the first jump around in 2 years at one of the college football games,
Yeah.
and people are just going bananas.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what everybody feels like right now.
It's a different energy. So I am more clear on being an entrepreneur for myself now than ever before. And I think it came after a year of like the adversity of really like having to decide one time again, like, is this what you really want? There's not a lot of safety nets for full-time DJs if a pandemic hits, right? And so it just got me creative again. I felt like I was 8 years old trying to figure it out. And I'm like, well, if I can't do DJing, what if I can do design or content for somebody and all this kind of stuff? And it just brought me into a whole new season, a whole new energy, a whole new level as an entrepreneur, and I love it.
Yeah, that's real. Kind of going off what Malcolm said about like that journey and having that faith. Like I was just telling somebody the other day, like being an entrepreneur is the biggest journey of faith that I've ever been on in my life. Like I just started my videography business at the beginning of this year. And obviously I've gone through stuff throughout my life, but like this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because it's like I knew becoming an entrepreneur was a grind. A different type of grind, if you will, but it's a mental grind more than I ever thought. Like every day you have to mentally prepare and mentally challenge yourself like that. Not only that you can do this, but how are you going to grow the business? What can you do differently? How can you market yourself? You know, all of that stuff. So for me, I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur per se. I was always comfortable in a day job, quote unquote. But what I realized is that I always like to be different. Even in high school, people would be like, join the basketball team or join the football team. And I said, no, I'd rather talk about it. So I had my own sports show in high school. And then in college, they were like, you know, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor. I said, no, I want to go be a sports reporter. You know what I mean? So it's like, I always wanted to kind of be different. So, I mean, I just kept following that same path. And even over the pandemic, I quit my full-time job to start up a videography business. And it's just been, like I said, a mental grind, but it's been a huge blessing. Like it's just challenged me in so many different ways and taught me how to grow and how to grind and the connections that you have to make and just being really driven in everything you do. So it's been a blessing, but it's definitely been the biggest, like I said, faith journey I've ever been on in my life. So it's really cool though. Really cool process.
And just translation for the moms out there, us saying that we're different is really translation for we are hard-headed. We were probably hard-headed our whole lives.
Exactly.
That is what that
Be
is.
honest with yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Yeah. Malcolm and I kind of the same deal. As I come from a long line of entrepreneurial, my family's just generationally, that's all they've done is had their own deal and done their own thing. But Ryan, this is what is really interesting to me, because I've done the day job and then gone back to being an entrepreneur. And my biggest, I'd say the hardest part of that is not having that comfort, that safety net, that check that always shows up. Man. And in the morning, hearing the, you can let me check out Sports Center real quick. Let me just, how did you learn to fight through that? You talked about the mental challenge of it all. How did you learn to fight that? Did you have coaching? Did you lean on a Malcolm? Did you lean on friends? How did you fight through that with just, I'm going to go be my own boss now?
Yeah. Honestly, Mike, it was really tough. And like I said, it's been a huge mental grind. The biggest thing for me though is leaning on different people who are entrepreneurs themselves. Like I'm a videographer, so I've got people who are my videographer mentors per se. So it was me just reaching out to them like, hey, let's do lunch one day, or hey, let me just call you and pick your brain, just to kind of know like how to schedule my day. Because like you said, I was used to just getting up, clocking in, clocking out at a certain time. But with this, you make your own schedule. So if you're lazy, you're going to be sitting around at home, not doing any work. But you got to try to figure out what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. So it took me a while at first to kind of learn the right way to go about it. But now it's like I've got a routine set. So the biggest thing for me is just following a routine. And I guess you can do this in anything that you're doing. But once you get consistent in a routine, the consistency is key. So once I go outside of my routine, I feel a little off. So it's just a reminder to kind of get back into what I have to do on a day-to-day. Even if I'm not getting a bunch of business or whatnot, it's like consistency is the best way for me to go about it. So that was the biggest thing for me.
I don't know if you guys know this, but Rob was one of the guys I called when I wanted to get into radio and get into the business. He was a producer here locally.
Don't do it.
And we called him up. We said, look, we'll take you to, I think it was a Smash Burger.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I want to pick your brain about this stuff. And here we are 13 years later.
Oh, congrats, you guys. That's
radio
amazing.
show. Absolutely crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I'll follow that up with you, Malcolm, too. And Ryan explained some of the consistency too. So you too, in going through the pandemic, and okay, we can't DJ because we're not allowed to have any parties, not in public, nowhere. Yeah. What was that mental grind like for you over the last? I mean, it's been more than a year. We're almost 2 years into this for now. Yeah. And how do you keep pushing through that? Because there's no doubt there had to be like, I guess I should. Can I call iHeart again and see if I can get back into iHeart?
I will say something. A call might have been made. And so to all of my family at iHeart, like, y'all know I love iHeart. It is, you know what it is? I think I had to really take myself completely out of it. I think what I knew worked. I know as an entrepreneur, I'm one of those people that I can never say fully that like I know what is best or I know what is right. I'm always open to new information, right? Because I'm just one of those people that I'm always going to be a student. Like I never, it's not that I never want to be a teacher or I don't have something to pass along to the next generation. I'm all about being a big uncle to like so many children, whether they want me as their uncle or not. I'm just so, Rob is the same, but where I'm just like, come under my wing. Come on, young man. Come on, young lady. Like, let me just give you everything that I know. Right. But I'm never communicating from the place of like, this is the only way to do it. Right. And I feel like with the pandemic, I already had a way that I kind of woke up every single day, but I was one of those people that I didn't stop. There was no breaks. There was no, day off that I gave myself. I never before the pandemic, believe this or not, unless I was like sick, I would never take a nap. I didn't believe in them. I was just like I got too much energy. And when the pandemic started, even though I had all the time in the world, I started committing to waking up every single day at 6 a.m. Wake up at 6 a.m., stretching, meditating, praying, and then journaling for about 30 minutes. I have a point where I have to fill certain pages. I just have to like fill the page, don't cheat on myself. And I feel like that was the biggest lesson of the pandemic for me was to not give myself space to negotiate with myself. And that was the mental fortitude that I had to build up. So to say vibrationally, who makes six figures vibrationally, who is in the spaces and in the rooms that I want to be in as an entrepreneur and as a mogul, as a host, as a DJ, as an entertainer. Well, what are they doing, right? And then you're hearing, well, I'm up every day at 4 a.m. I'm at the gym by 6. And I was like, you know what? I have to probably adopt some of that lifestyle if I want to be aligned with that. So it got me to this point, and I think that's why, I'm joking about good morning to you guys, but I'm like, right after this, I'm due for my nap because I've been up since 5:30. Like, Ryan knows he gets like a bunch of texts from me sometimes at 7 a.m. And it's like, I know he's not going to see them for the next few hours. I'm just blowing him up with like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about this morning. Okay, great. And then, I'm off. And so by the time I get to, like 10 o'clock, my emails are sent, my work for the day, my day is most times like created, and I can take the point to like nap or what else I do for mental health is like skate. I just love to rollerblade. And so I'm like, all right, cool. By noon, I'm out skating around the lighthouse, man, because I'm over it already. So that is like some of the mental fortitude that I had to just build up because nothing in life is promised. And I think right when you thought like, oh, I'm the best DJ in LA, all these gigs, they're mine. And then you see like 40 contracts just go up in the air and you're like,
I'm still the best DJ, but I'm still the best DJ,
but no one knows. So catch me on like live streaming. I don't know. It is. And so it's like, I think everything that I thought I knew about myself, everything that I thought I knew, and everything that I thought I had working, every few years or so, reality always kind of punches you right in the jaw. And like, no, you don't. And so I'm one of those people that I'm just, I let my hands up all the time. And I'm like, I don't know everything. Creator knows everything, but I just always have to be open and accepting of new information and new ways to be better.
Yeah, you're making Rob break out in a rash talking about getting up that early.
Oh yeah, triggered.
I've done it so long. I don't want to do it anymore. Most of my life has been morning radio shows and getting up at 3 or 2:30 in the morning. So I'm kind of good. 8 a.m. is a good time to wake up for me. I go to bed at midnight, wake up at 8. That's kind of my lifestyle.
Let's talk about the genesis of this podcast. Let's talk about let's talk about how you guys started it, what it's all about, and let's start digging into that.
Ooh, Hale, go for it, man. You break it down so beautifully. You really do.
He's got the best elevator pitch. Hit it, Ryan.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, honestly, I tell people all the time, this is probably something that we should have did years ago, but timing is everything. So me and Malcolm have obviously been friends for a while now, went to college together. But the way this podcast really came together is that we both were helping each other with our own brands and were able to partner up in our own brands. And then we started to get a lot of feedback about when we were on each other's shows or each other's podcast, talk show. And that was one of the most viewed shows or podcasts all the time, is when we were connected with each other. So it was like, instead of just pushing this off any longer, we might as well do something consistently together. And Unfiltered Gems, the name of the podcast, began from an episode that we did over the pandemic of my talk show, Mental Notes Live. And we sat down and just talked for about an hour and a half about everything that was going on in the pandemic during that time, and about racial injustice and a bunch of different topics. And then we fell in love with that idea so much, just having conversations like that, and people, the feedback that we got, we was like, we might as well turn this into something that we do more consistently, having these conversations about what's going on. But most importantly, just giving people encouragement, making people feel good, laughing a lot. Our podcast, we laugh 90% of the
much. So much. Like, so, it was just like realizing like we can't do news reporting, maybe, exactly. But like, and I feel like it's like you guys. I think that's where we took a note from you guys, where it's like, I love listening to the Brewmance, because it's like, yes, I get information about what's happening, but it doesn't feel like I'm watching a talking head or listening to a talking head. It's just like the conversation that I have with Ryan. It's just like the conversation that I have with my friends, my family, right? Where it's not so here's what happened and this is an objective facts. It's like, when you're at the bar, you are not talking like that. We're sitting there like, man, screw you. And literally, like, my elevator pitch about it is that Ryan and I can constantly like believe two completely different things. We most times will disagree on so many things. But the beautiful part about it, and I think what was the antithesis for me, and where I was like, you know what, we need to turn this into something, was that we can always disagree and always come back and be like, screw you. Well, hey, cheers.
Love
you, man. And keep it going. Love you, man. It's like, we could sit here like, did you really say that about my mama? Yes. Okay, well, cheers. All right, never mind.
You know what? You might be right about that, but it's still funny.
You might be right about that. But like, my mama is crazy. She's crazy. I love you. Yeah. So, but she loves me a lot. Like, it's one of those things that we can really like go at each other's throats, always respectfully. And I feel like that's what is needed right now. That's why there's always going to be spaces for the Brewmance. That's why there's always going to be spaces for the Unfiltered Gems, because we're getting to this generation where no one wants to talk anymore. Mm-hmm. People want to say, man, I got this one opinion, all right, like, I know how to work. Mike, let me tell you about your life. And it's like, I never lived in your life. I don't know. Like, I'm projecting my own experience, my own ideas of how I've lived my life onto you. And I think the beautiful part about me and Ryan's relationship in this podcast is that it is so indicative of a lot of opinions that people have. I think the best feedback that I can always get is when maybe I say a joke or I say something that I was kind of uncomfortable about. I'm like, might be a little tongue in cheek. And then like someone texts you and like, oh my God, when you said this about Bill Maher, when you said this about Taylor Swift, and when you said this about Kanye, like, man, I think it in my head, but I've never said it out loud. And like, thank you. You know what I'm saying? Because it was funny and I connected with it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's why we do this, right?
I just think it's important. And Rob, we've talked about this before a bunch of times, just about like having different opinions. And Malcolm kind of mentioned this all the time. Like, me and Malcolm see the world similarly, but very differently at times. Oh, and I think that's so important too, is like, we shy away from having conversations with people who think differently than us. Yeah. But that's how you grow. So lots of times in our conversations that we have, they can get uncomfortable sometimes because it's not going to be a similar opinion, but it's always a great conversation that can challenge your thought process, challenge your perspective and everything like that. And like Michael said, I think that's needed and that's important for the society and the world we're living in today. So.
But it's where we come from, though. I think it's where both of us come from. So Rob and I, friends 13 years. You guys went to college together, been friends for I don't know how many years that makes that. Mm-hmm. But it's genuine. It's fun when you have that connection and you weren't just put together. I think in our world, in the talk radio world, hosts are put together, and it doesn't work. It rarely works because they don't have that connection. They can't say that screw you, cheers. They can't. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to do that. Where you two know how to do that. Rob and I know how to do that. And I think that adds a little something to it.
Right.
1,000%.
Definitely.
And I think that, the idea is too to get other people's perspectives on things without judging them in their perspective.
Right.
So one of the conversations you guys had on Mental Notes Live, which is Ryan's talk show, go on YouTube and watch, particularly this episode, especially like, I'm going to just inject race because I'm not afraid to talk about race, especially with you guys. As a white person who has had different interactions with the police than most black, particularly men in this country. So you guys had a debate about policing in America, and you had a cop on, a black cop, who has that perspective. And I thought that was so valuable, even for me, who studied policing for 25 years in this country, dug deep in, tried to look at all the perspectives of it. But one thing that I think is really missing from the current political conversation is young black males' perspectives on policing. And you guys, Malcolm, and Malcolm Alexander's with us. He is a DJ. He and Ryan Hale have their new podcast out called Unfiltered Gems. Ryan's a videographer. And these two young men they're amazing people. They quickly became two of my favorite people. And that's why I wanted to have them on, because they're doing similar things. It's about challenging and pushing each other. So Malcolm, you had that position of really abolishing the police.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you guys to explain why, because you say something to a guy like, abolish the police? What do you mean? Who am I going to call if someone comes into my house? Well, you have all these thoughts, right? And Mike's raising his hand. Ryan had more of an approach of more of a defund, but work the funding into community programs. And then the cop had the policing perspective.
Yeah.
So that's why this is so interesting, because you're allowed to have different perspectives, and you're allowed to share your opinions and try to work through them and see, number one, if you can communicate with each other honestly without judging each other, which you guys did, and the cop did a very good job as well. But walk me through that process of how you guys communicate from having a different point of view. So abolish the police, Malcolm. Ryan, defund the police. The cop was also, I kind of agree with Ryan, I think. He was more like, money needs to go to community programs, less on the criminality of it.
Yeah.
So, the funny thing about the way this...
Here, hold on, I'll go, because I know you're going to go with this. It started literally...
Ryan, sip it.
Sip it, Ryan. You can't speak now. No. But I felt so bad, and I feel bad for our friend Paige. This is where I'm going with it. Because it started with, like, after the Floyd verdict came out, everyone's on social media with their like all right, like justice, and other people were like, it's not enough, and it's just like, right, I mean, an album can drop, right, and everyone wants to give a 24 album review of an album, right? So it's like news happens in the Twitter age, and it's just like everyone's talking about it. And so I was on social media, and Ryan's on social media, then I know we just start kind of texting, and Ryan saying his opinions about it, and I started saying my opinions, and it started getting into like, I've never had a text debate quite like this, because normally I'm one of those, like, I'm not gonna, if I'm texting more than 2 sentences, get on the phone and call me. Like, I'm not gonna sit here writing Bible verses to my friends. It's not gonna happen.
Not verses, Bible chapters.
No, we were anthologies. Like, both of us were going back and forth. Like, but I think that's what kind of spawned that conversation, was us going in, and I had my thoughts and opinions on what justice really meant for this country and what it really meant for me and my opinion from it. And
which is what, explain what justice is to Malcolm Alexander, at least you going back when Floyd happened a little over a year ago.
So in this context, I feel like it was justice to an extent, but what it was accountability. He got what majority of wrong police officers should have gotten throughout the whole time. So I think I'm one of those where I can't celebrate and just like, it was everything, we finally got it, because it's like, this is what we should have been getting for not even decades, for centuries. And even since Floyd, and I can't remember the officer's name now.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
He's in jail.
I was like, he's in jail. I'm trying to remember, but like
I remember it, but I don't like, when it comes to things like that, I don't, especially like even mass shooters, I don't like to say their names, because I feel like some of them, that's what they want, that infamy, that fame. So it's sometimes best to not
even mention it, right?
But how great is it that we have forgotten his name?
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I think I actually have it in the back of my mind now, and I'm like, you know what? No, actually, forget it, right? I know that he was held accountable for what he did, and the whole world watched. And even when there's been proof time and time again of an officer assaulting and most times killing a black man or a black woman or a person of color, even when we see it and we have the proof, there might be an indictment. Maybe that's the most it goes. And so I think I was a little more aggressively just kind of like, cool, accountability. We finally got a good example of what should be done and a precedent for what should be done going forward. And even then, we see light indictments, but that's still the most pivotal thing that's happened to a police officer who has done something wrong, when we know there's so many. And so I was on the stance of like, justice means a whole lot more of this. Justice would mean a complete abolishing and reimagining. And I think that those are the words that we threw around for our episode, of the entire policing system. I do not know if like Badge and a Gun and Boys in Blue and our exact, mindset of what policing is. I don't know if that's going to be conducive for community integrity and community upward growth. And so that was the stance that I took kind of along with for the episode. And then Ryan was a little bit more contrarian to that.
Everything Malcolm was saying is right on the money of how the conversation began.
But I'm going to just interject too, because you hear real quick, Ryan, apologize, Malcolm say abolish. And you're like, what do you mean? You want to get rid of the police? But then you adds in the reimagine, right? So it's not getting rid of police. It's just, is there a better way to do this? And I think as human beings, as America, as the world, we should always be thinking better. Like, how do we do whatever it is better, whether it's policing or not? So sorry, Ryan, just wanted to interject just add a little context there.
I can solve that right now before Ryan jumps in, is just you take government out of it. Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
No one can see, but I'm pointing at Mike. I'm like, yes. So true.
100%. I just, first off, as far as like the genesis of the conversation, I just thought it was important to, because like I said, me and Malcolm had this conversation or this text debate, if you will. But I was thinking in my head, like they can hear us talk back and forth for an hour about this, but what's going to give it, like I said, a different perspective, or a perspective that people don't get a chance to hear a lot. So that's why I thought about finding a Black police officer who I thought that was important, because he even said on the show, he felt like he had a foot in both camps. The Black community that felt like they were being attacked, and then also police officers who feel some type of way as well. So for me, my whole perspective on it was that I felt like me and Malcolm were very similar in that, yes, I want to reimagine policing as well. I want to tear down what we have right now because it's not something that has worked specifically for the Black community. But I did not want to necessarily remove, quote unquote, policing as a whole, because I feel like we still need some sort of policing, in the right form of it, as a protection for communities and different things like that. And that's why, if you watch the conversation, I go back to this a lot, of how growing up, we knew police officers' names. We knew who police officers were in our community, and it was not the type of hate relationship that we feel for them today. I've talked to a lot of Black people, even on the show last year, who were in distress, but they didn't want to call the police. Like, that was their complete last resort, was to call the police. And so for me, it's like, if we can literally, like Malcolm said, reimagine this thing and create something that is more of a community style policing, where we only call police if that is a last resort, or if that's something that we need, instead of calling them for mental health things or calling them for this and that stuff that we can figure out as a community, then I feel like that would be a better route to take. So that was my stance on it, pretty much.
And I think
about
where
you're going with that, Ryan. We talk about, we used to know the names.
Right.
Because you look at where that term comes, whether it's Phoenix's finest, NYC's finest, LA's finest, that comes from a day where they would go to school, then they would go to an academy. Out of that academy, the best were picked.
Right.
It was a whole different ball game back then. And I think that when I said get government out of the way, government took over and made it impossible to hold anyone accountable, impossible to fire anybody with the police unions and all of that. And then it devolved from there. I think steps backwards to where it used to be community. You knew your cop. You knew the cop that was around.
My dad says anytime we talking about policing, and I'm a product of first responders. My dad's a veteran, and then he was a captain of the fire authority, Orange County Fire, up until the point that he retired. And he would always say that he was way more scared of my grandma than the police, because like my dad grew up between Detroit and Connecticut, and it's like you go up in the hood, and he's a hoodlum, and so he's over here like my dad will always talk about, like, our favorite pastime was always watching like blaxploitation films together, Foxy Brown and Dolomite and Shaft, like Richard Roundtree Shaft, right? Like, and it's so funny because like my dad will say like, yeah, my aspiration ahead of like going in the military was to be like the pimps on the corner. Like, those were like the pillars of the community, right? And he's like, if I was out and if I was doing something that I shouldn't have been involved in, he goes, I was so hyped when I saw, and I forget, he would say Officer Brown or whatever. He's like, Officer Brown would come around, and he said the look on my face wasn't because I was scared of Officer Brown, because Officer Brown had an equally as scared face, because the Officer Brown said, I really don't have to take you home to your mama, because I'm going to have to hear it and you're going to have to hear it, right? There was this accountability, and it's like you had Black officers representing Black communities. You had Latinx officers representing Latin communities, and so on and so forth. And so there wasn't a lot of excessive force. Not to say it didn't happen, because there's so much erasure that we hear, right? I mean, people are just now coming hip to what happened with the Oklahoma massacre, right? And Black Wall Street. And there's so many other towns that have been erased out of history, right? And there's this constant thing of retelling history that's conducive for non-Black people sometimes than it is for like what really happened. But I think when it comes to policing, we had community oversight more than we had policing. And when I make the stance on abolition, it's not me saying like, cool, I want every police station
free for all,
gone. Free for all. Like, right? I'm like, yeah, anarchy. Like, let's go. Like, we've been waiting for the purge. We know it's not like that is not going to happen, and I'm not advocating for that, right? I think when I make it a stance for abolition and saying like, wipe it away, this is a process that's going to take decades. But I feel we need aggressive language now to create it better, for a better future tomorrow, because it was aggressive to talk about social media 12 years ago. One day, everything's gonna be from the palm of your hand. We said, oh God, remember when the robots take over, everybody got an iPhone now or a Droid. You know what I'm saying? Like mom, grandma. I remember even with the vaccine, my grandma was talking about Tuskegee, the Tuskegee experiments, right? And that's why a lot of Black people have their hesitations, right? My grandma was also first in line, and after that, she's like, "Well, hey, we got some information. We're good, right?" we can be so sure of what we know one day, and it can change, So I know when it comes to policing, when it comes to community, it's something that I want to see happen, and it's going to take decades to get away from this pride of blue lives and go back to I care about the community, and I want the community to do better. I want this little Black girl, this little Black kid, this little white girl, this little white kid, this little trans kid, this little gay kid. I don't care who you are. I want them to have a better life in this community, in my little block. And I want to make sure that our community enforcement and our community safety agency is there to support that.
I want your idea, Rob.
What's that?
Kick in here. I want your idea. I want you to chime in on this.
I ultimately think it's a trust issue, quite honestly. And I've talked to Malcolm and Ryan about this.
Yeah.
Very clearly, at least from my standpoint. And the reason why I really do not like the United States government is essentially because of how the United States government and state governments have treated Black people throughout this country's history. So in abusing the power, that causes a lack of trust. And we have a history of abuses of power, which we were just talking about a little bit in the modern context, and George Floyd and the police officers that were involved in that. So my question is, how do you restore trust? Because in trying to get to a better place, right? So Malcolm, I think you're onto something. Ryan, I think you're onto something. How do we go into the communities that need the most help? How do we effectively help them? Because I have such a skeptical view of politicians, because they've long promised, we're going to deliver for you, particularly for young Black people, right? We are going to improve the schools, and we're going to have better government, and we're going to make sure that we give you advantages. But they never quite gets there. So in looking at politicians throughout history, I think that they're the problem, because most of the time they're always thinking about themselves and how to win re-election.
Incumbency, baby.
And that's it.
Always.
So, aside from policing, to use your example, Malcolm, of the community, if we can all figure out what we think is best for our community and vote accordingly, and not just vote for the name you know, the name you trust. What movie was that from, Mike Russell? The Eddie Murphy movie?
Distinguished Gentleman. Eddie Murphy.
Distinguished Gentleman. I love that movie.
So good, whatever it was.
Jeff Johnson.
Exactly. And that's it, right? Yeah. We get stuck in this system where if you look at the election, 2020, you have Trump versus Biden. Both over 70.
Yeah.
Both maybe shouldn't be making decisions for us as younger people. But we're so afraid to change up that system that that's the challenge to me, is ultimately comes down to us. And if, you guys through Unfiltered Gems, your new podcast, Malcolm and Ryan, go check it out. Go subscribe wherever you get your podcast right now, because you can hear interesting perspectives, interesting conversations from two brilliant, amazing human beings who are filled with so much light that I encourage you to listen to and just hear from and as they share their talents and thoughts with you.
And damn good-looking men.
That's true.
Thank you, Mike.
There's a lot of handsome on this podcast right now. There is a lot of handsome. And that's what I think. But I think the Brewmance, and I think that Unfiltered Gems with you guys, Malcolm and Ryan, it's even what you said, Malcolm, a few minutes ago about getting people to say what they actually want to say and be unafraid to say that, even if it's an opinion that not everybody agrees with. Because you guys know me. My favorite group of all time is Outkast. And one of the reasons I gravitated towards Outkast is because they literally said, from the brand name that we do things differently. We are outcasts.
Yes.
It's good to be an outcast. It's okay to be an outcast. We should encourage more people to be outcasts, to think differently. Whether it's COVID, whether it's government, whether it's policing, let's have all the opinions out there, all the ideas, and see if we can't maybe, that's a great idea. Let's combine it with this idea and see if this will work. That will get us to be more free, which is my ultimate goal for every human being, to be as free as you want to be.
1000%.
I'm going to jump in with two beautiful ideas. They're brilliant. I'm going to say they're brilliant already. So you're going to have to come along or you're going to look terrible. If you
I believe it. I'm already on. I'm on board.
Ideas. These are off the charts. Fantastic. Here's what I've seen in my friends that have that are part of like the volunteer police force. Those are some of the coolest, most mellow guys that want to be part of the community, that want to help out, that want to do good. I like one of two options to reimagine policing, and this is where I'll stake my flag, is that we say term limits for politicians. I think that there should be a policing year limit, a time limit, term limit, whatever it is. Because like our founding fathers, they knew, and that's why the checks and balances came in, that the natural progression of man in power is tyranny. So the longer someone's in there, the more they hunger for power, want power, and start to exercise that power. Totally. Or it's an issue of there's a volunteer police force, and that's what it is. You have a day job and you get an income being a police officer as well, but you have something else that you do in the community. And I think that is a good option to look for. I told you it was a brilliant point. You can applaud it. Thank you.
Well, what we're doing, right? Each one of us has shared a different idea. Yet here we are talking and accepting other people's ideas, accepting Malcolm's, Ryan's, Mike's idea, my idea, and trying to talk it out rather than yelling at each other. Because I think that's part of the problem, right? Especially with COVID, the mask debate, the vaccine debate. We don't have to yell at each other. Yeah. We really don't, because that doesn't solve any problems, and you never influence people by judging them. That's my rule right here for you now. If you judge someone else's opinion, you will never sway them, no matter how persuasive your argument ever is.
100%.
I do like
let's get rid of judgment
disclaimer,
as well.
I like what Malcolm said. This is a while ago. I'm going to jump back here. When you said, I think we need aggressive language now. He says it's going to take decades, but we need aggressive language to kind of jar people in. Yes. And when you use words like abolish, and Ryan said earlier, injustice, it makes people very uncomfortable. Yes. But when you preface it with something, I mean, that was so easy what Malcolm did. And it hit something in my mind that, well, wait a second. Okay. Now I see where you're coming from. It's not an aggressive, I'm attacking you. I just want to use aggressive language so we wake everyone up.
So, and that's, I mean, because think about 5 years ago, defund the police it's still a triggering sentiment. Sure. But even defund the police, that was aggressive language. I mean, there was still, like, you can look at plenty black luminaries, Angela Davis. You can look at everybody who, Bobby Seale, before being assassinated, a lot of our luminaries, right? Huey P. and the Black Panthers, like, police and prison industrial complex abolition is not a new concept by any means, right? But even a decade ago, and after Trayvon Martin, when the antithesis of what we see as like police killings in the Twitter age, right? It's not that we didn't have it happening before, but where it's happening, boom, and it's on Twitter and it's on the news and it's here. The whole world sees it, right? No, we weren't even saying defund then. We weren't saying the defund police. And then when we started saying that in 2012 and so on and so forth, I remember, like, it was, whoa, defund. And now you are not a trendy police department in the USA if you haven't implemented some kind of, we've defunded and reallocated the funds.
Reimagine.
We reimagine, right? Most times what that is, I look at like Texas, where it's like, cool, they like pretty much took one person's job away and created another person's job, and it's like, we've defunded the police and we reallocated the funds. Government. We did it, right? But again, like, defund was really jarring at one point, right? And abolition is jarring at some points. And it's like, I think slowly but surely in 10 more years, we're going to be saying something super aggressive. And I'm going to be like, whoa. But then I'm going to say, well, and then I'm going to think on it. I'm going to have a beer and I'm going to say, oh, there's a point to it. Right. Yeah. Especially if it's meaning that communities are safer. We are seeing safer communities in spaces where, and I'm not saying in every place, but we're seeing safer communities in the spaces that the police are being questioned now and the police are being held accountable.
I think it's a great follow-up, Malcolm, in that the idea is to actually live our creed, right? The founders specifically wrote to create a more perfect union. And I think that language is so important because that's essentially what we're all trying to do so that we can actually have a level playing field. And I think that that's a noble goal. It's a difficult goal, but what goals are worth doing if they're not difficult? I mean, look at you guys, Ryan and Malcolm, going out on your own and becoming entrepreneurs and doing what you actually want to do, not what other people wanted you to do. Why do it if it's easy? I mean, there's no challenge and there's no hurdles. And that's where I think this is our kind of 1960s moment, because we get to define what the future for us as Americans, as the world is, especially if we're wise about it and we're willing to listen and converse about other people's ideas. And if you're not right and your idea is not chosen, go, okay, that's fine. Let's see how this works. But Mike always likes to say, you always do what you always done. You always get what you always got.
Ooh, come on. Love it.
That in America,
love it.
That's what we'll do. We'll end up doing the same thing over again so that your kids, our kids, and our grandkids be having this same conversation. We don't want them to have the same conversation. We want them to have a better starting point where the problems are smaller and there's still things to work on, but they're not like this, like a huge gap, right? They're like, all right, instead of being 6 feet apart, we're 6 inches apart. And we're like, okay, we're making progress here. So that, I guess, is a follow-up question for you, Ryan and Malcolm, is how do we make progress on this? So how do we go from the conversations to implementation?
Okay. Now that's something that I'm searching for. Oh my God. Because
I think we all are.
I was going to say, like, you start with a conversation, and I think that's easy, right? Because so many people want that, right? But then you say from conversation to implementation. I don't know.
Now,
Ryan, do you know?
Let me jump in with a potential, like, this is what we're up against, right? Is the power structure that wants to stay the power structure. So how much money goes into politics? And I don't care if you vote for Democrat or Republican. Essentially, it's the same process, right? It's Republicans get money from funding. Democrats get money from the funding. And the idea is to keep those people in power to make decisions for you. That's the hardest part that we have to interrupt, because we accept that there's two people that you vote for. You pick one or you pick the other. Most of the time it's, I don't like that one, I'll vote for this one. I don't like them, but I don't hate them as much as I hate the other one. That's the part I think that we got to figure out how to change. We got to be, again, like saying uncomfortable things and being willing to say your crazy opinion. You got to vote for the candidate you actually want, not for, all right.
But people don't even want candidates. I mean, it's like, okay, so is it aggressive language to say, like, cool, the two-party system is what has brought us to here? Is there a better system?
Yes.
And in some some spaces you say that, and it's just like, well, I don't know. Our founding, calm down. We know that it's brought us to here, and it's done something. There's been good that's come from it. There's been bad that's come from it. But is democracy? Is this really the creme de la creme of political landscapes? And that's just where I think that's where I interjected. So it's like, to implement something, Mike, genius ideas, dude. Term limits, and then if you make, I think you inspire passion, right? To be, if you're a police officer who has to now work for free and do it out of the love of your heart, I feel a whole lot safer. I don't know, already right there, because I'm just like, because there's people who are not, who are people of color who are like, man, I'd love to be a police officer, but like, it's the culture of policing that I can't get down with. And I'm like,
or the thought of the community bashing me now because I am a police officer.
Because I am a police officer.
That's a big thing too for Black people.
Oh my God. I know Black police officers who, like, their family has just because they're
crazy to me, but
you ain't one of us now. It's like, ooh,
dang,
that's crazy.
Like it, and we as Black people have our own separations. Like, we can't, like, there's so much unity that we have to find amongst Black people and what we agree on as Black Americans, right? Like, people that are descendants of long lines, like from slavery, right? That have just been here, right? Mixed with indigenous blood, right? Black people that have just been here for centuries on this and truly are like tillers of this land. And then you have the other massive, beautiful part of the diaspora and all the Black people from Africa and the Caribbean and South America. And it's like, and we're supposed to somehow be like, cool, here's like how the black people think.
Well,
And
that's
then
what
it's like,
the media does. That's what politicians do, right? A black vote. The black.
Exactly.
I'm always like,
Right.
have you ever talked to a black person? They're the same as everybody else. They have different opinions. Like, it makes no sense.
Or now it's like it's just easy to even further like make a monolith and say just people of color. You know, and it's just like, so let's just go to how the people of color think. Like, I've literally had friends tell me, they're like, oh, you know, and like, considering like where they grew up and all that kind of stuff, and this person happened to be white, but she told me, she said, oh, I at one point thought just all people of color stuck together, because I was telling her maybe some like there's disagreements I was having with people about community. She was like, oh, that's crazy. So yeah, I guess like maybe Asians and blacks and Mexicans all don't agree. No,
maybe all black people don't agree either.
Not all black people.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying no in like a negative way. I'm saying like hell no in the best way, because we are not the same.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Me and Ryan, like, you know, that's how this podcast came to be, because me and Ryan are black, but we are not the same, and it's so fucking amazing. You know, excuse me, I don't know.
It's okay. It'll be fun watching Rob find that in the editing. So
to mute that out.
Mute that one out.
Well, that's how we do it. Like, the podcast is unfiltered, just like you guys is Unfiltered Gems. The radio version, which airs Saturday nights on 550 KFY from 6 to 7, will be obviously.
Let them know. Woo, let's go.
That is filtered.
All right. I want to go back, if I could, quick to Rob's implementation question, because I think it's natural to us. Rob and I having a conversation, Ryan and Malcolm having a conversation. It's second nature to us to be open, know we're in a safe place, and we can challenge each other. I think the implementation starts with us encouraging people to do just that. Because what stops us from implementation and what makes implementation look like such a daunting task is no one's going to want to talk about anything that's different than what they're doing now. And if we can, through Unfiltered Gems, through the Brewmance, encourage people to do just what we're doing right now, I think that is a huge implementation step.
Oh,
that massive.
I've said that many times on the show, even after we had the policing conversation on Mental Notes Live. It's just like, these conversations are how we create change. It all starts there. It all starts with having those difficult, uncomfortable conversations with people who have different perspectives. And kind of going back to what Malcolm said earlier, I think to answer your question, Rob, about implementation, is I think it's going to take some of that aggressive language and aggressive moves, unique moves or unique ideas, like Mike mentioned earlier, with the term limits and things like that. That's the only way it's going to change, because a lot of people say the system is broken, but it's truly not. It's working the way it was designed. Like Mike said earlier, like the government stepped in and now it's hard to hold police officers accountable. We're getting police officers who are not in shape out here patrolling the streets and things of that nature. Like, it's working how they've designed it for. So it's going to take something drastic to change that system and to start implementing some of these ideas and some of these changes to help make communities safer and educate communities and reallocate those funds and things like that. But it's going to take a drastic change. But I agree with Mike. It all starts with having those uncomfortable, difficult conversations consistently, though, for sure.
And I've always said too, and like to Mike, to echo you, it starts at the dinner table. It starts at supper, like I'll always say, right? Because it's like, it's our parents that do have maybe the older ideations or the older ideologies, right? And so to be able to hold that conversation, because like my dad will still say things. It's like, my dad's not all the way woke, you know. He's my grandma would say he's French kissing 70. Like, what I would not expect my dad to have, like, to be as woke and be talking about police abolition. Like, you know, I love talking to my dad about Vietnam, because he still throws terms around, and I'm like, you can't use that. You can't say it like that, Dad. And he goes, well, I don't understand why you can't. Like, you know, it starts at supper. And so being able to like hold grace for people in your family and say like, all right, like, I hear what you're saying. It's wrong. I disagree, but I hear what you're saying. And then being able to say like, here's how I agree. And here's what it is on my front. And here's what it is. Like, it starts there at Thanksgiving. We have people now, I love seeing Twitter around Thanksgivings where like people are so proud of like, I'm not going home for the holidays anymore because my family is this and my family is that. My dad's this. And not saying that it's wrong, because I understand a healthy boundary too. There are some family members that are just beyond reproach. But it starts at the dinner table. It starts within the families. It starts within our communities. You know, it's like I'm so blessed that I can talk with my neighbors, and it's like I've always manifested like living situations where I'm very close with my neighbors. Where some friends, they live in apartments, and I'm like, who's your neighbor next door? I don't know. I don't know. I've seen him sometimes. I'm friends. That's me. But like the implementation, like my neighbors to the right of me, the mom speaks. They have two like super young children, and like I love them. Like shout out to Genesis and Alex. But like I feel like I'm always hearing this story of their life in Spanish because they're predominantly Spanish speaking, and so it's like I hear the hardworking dad that comes home after a long day, and I hear mi princesa, mi hermosa, like and him like coming home to his kids and coming home to his wife or however that is, right? And him and I being able to sometimes he'll just pull out his grill and he makes just a bunch of food. He used to own a restaurant, and I found this out the other day because my other neighbor, right? So just a simple implementation of like, I know all of my neighbors and we've all been able to have conversations, even during the pandemic, about certain things, right? Some people were like, oh, I don't know about the vaccine. Some, I'm not getting it. I'm totally getting it. I'm all, what do you mean can't get it? And this is happening right here in just our parking lot. Starts right there. If we're just willing to just be a little open, right?
Yeah.
It starts with just, it's one day it was a wave when I came in, and then it was, hey, you mind if I get your number just because, we're neighbors, and if anything happens, I want to, and then from there, next, you're talking, so it's like have a conversation, but the implementation of it is like be open and being willing and being self-aware, encouraging self-awareness, encouraging people to like know that that's your opinion, but it's not everyone's opinion. Be accountable for your feelings, be accountable for that, and keep it pushing. And
I like that.
I hope,
100% agree.
Yeah.
And I think that it really does start with you, right? You have to have the mental fortitude to be able to accept other people for who they are, where they are in their journey right now. It's not going to be the same as you because everybody has their own experiences. So I'll use my brother as an example. So I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. So we grew up in the same house, same parents, same circumstances. But he's going to view things differently than I am because he's going to interpret things differently than I am. But the fact that you can talk to your brother about those is what makes the difference. Mike can do that with his sister. So, I think the sibling relationship is about as similar as a human experience that there is. But even that, it's very dissimilar at the same time because my brother Chris's brain is different than mine, and his emotions are different than mine. And no matter where they're at, even the crazy uncle that you don't want to talk to at Thanksgiving.
Totally.
Understand that.
I'm that guy. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. This is the Crazy Uncle podcast.
That's the new podcast. All four of us.
There you go. Exactly. But Crazy Uncle Mike, right? His experiences from birth to now have shaped him to be who he is. That doesn't mean he's incapable of change. It's just you have to accept him in that moment for what he is and what he says, and say, okay, maybe I'll judge this later, but I'm not going to judge this right now. That's the hardest part I think about being a human is saying, I gotta take all of this in and try my best not to judge, not to label, and just accept. And I think that is the hugest part. Sorry, Mike.
That goes back to I interrupted you, buddy. You don't have to be sorry. That goes back to Malcolm's monolithic talk. He's talking about we're all as a black community, we all think the same way, and that's the view there. What Rob just brought up is something very interesting because him and his brother are genetically identical. Genetically, they have the same everything. And yet their views, opinions, thoughts, actions completely different. And so it doesn't matter. Like I think that's when we have to move forward is stop thinking that all white people think the same, all black people think the same, because even when you forget skin color, identical DNA,
you are so different,
completely differently.
Right. So true.
And I just make the realization. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go.
No, I just like you ever make the realization, and you look at family, or you look at like friends. If you're even lucky enough to have like friends from elementary school or middle school or high school, in whatever capacity, whether it's Facebook friends, whether y'all text every day, whether y'all are roommates, I don't know, right? You ever think sometimes like the only thing that we have in common is blood, and sometimes we put the pressure on it to like where we have to be what brothers are. We have to be what sisters are. We have to be what cousins are because we're blood. And it's like, no, I can actually just respect you over there and you having that total opinion. And you can respect me in my space and me having that opinion. And we actually don't have to like conform to this community idea of what cousins are, what brothers are, what sisters are. It could be completely different, right? And I feel like sometimes it's that. Maybe all we have in common is that we grew up in the same town, but it doesn't mean that I have to like agree with everything you say, or you agree with everything and you be me and I be you. And it's no, we're so different. even when we were blood. And it's like that, it does, it leads to the greater challenge of what it is to then create community with people that are not your blood or not from the same town. The only thing that we have in common is we live in the same city. Okay. And that is, and maybe that might be the only thing we have in common. Great. But what can we agree on?
Yeah, that's true. And I was just going to say, that kind of goes back to me and Malcolm's relationship, like we've touched on throughout. Like, if people think by watching our podcast or hearing about it that they're both black, they're going to have to, trust me, we don't have the same.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
It's very shocking at times when we don't think the same. So when we think the same, should I say? So yeah, it's just like you guys have mentioned, like it's not, everybody doesn't think the same, but it's important to have those conversations with people who think differently than you, because that's the only way you can grow. You don't grow in comfort, you grow when you're uncomfortable. And those conversations are wildly uncomfortable, especially with everything that's going on right now. But the more we have those conversations consistently, it'll challenge our thought processes and help us to kind of create some new systems and things like that.
And stop being so damn sensitive.
Oh, so
everything doesn't have to offend you, whether it's whatever group you want to identify as, and everything outside of that group does not have to offend you. It's okay. It's some people talk a different way. Some people look a different way. Some people dress a different way. Some people marry a different way. Stop being offended by everything.
Well, and also, like, being offended is a personal responsibility, right? Because just because you are offended does not mean that everybody else is offended. Even if
my pastor always says, what offends you reveals you. So that offense is something that you need to really look at yourself. So that's real. Yeah.
I'm agree with Pastor Moore on that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, triggers are opportunities. They're opportunities to learn about yourself. If something triggers you, why? Why is that? And you got to try to figure out why. So, for example,
that's where the work starts.
It is. So traffic triggers me because I want to control everything in traffic. But I had to figure out why. I actually created this process, which it actually, you guys will appreciate this. I termed it writing a rap. So R stands for recognize, A stands for assess, P stands for process. So you recognize what? Traffic makes me frustrated. Cool. So I'm assessing what's going on. Okay, so what's the how? It's because I can't control everything. But what I realized in the P in the processing is that it's because I'm afraid of getting in an accident. I'm afraid. My biggest fear is dying in a traffic accident or someone I love dying in a traffic accident. So I have all this fear associated with driving, so it makes me want to control everything. But if everybody drove like me, no one would die in a traffic accident. It's like one of those things. So I'm working on letting that go, but I had to go through that process of writing my rap and figuring it out.
I love it. I love it. I enjoy that for you. It even on that traffic analogy, right? I think it's because I know I'm triggered by traffic, and it's so easy. Like I used to be someone who had road rage. I am not a road rager anymore, right? Just took a little bit of awareness because why are you mad at other people on the road in traffic? And it's like, if you take time to pick it apart for myself, like for me, I'm honking and I'm mad that I'm in traffic because I didn't leave early enough.
See? Yes. Especially in LA.
You're not mad at everyone else. Are you really mad at the 405? The 405 has been showing you who she is for decades. You know who the
405 and I don't live there anymore.
Why are you mad at 405? 405 has never changed. She has always been the same. She's thick and full of traffic. Okay. That is the 405. That's who she is. Yeah. Living her best life. She's the same, right? And so it's like, I'll get, Mike, from the 710 trip to 405. I'm like, I'm up. And you'll hit it, and it's like, I got to be there at 5. And you're looking at, and it's 4:30, and I'm like, I got to be in Echo Park. And you're like, I'm not going to make it. So it's like, but then we project that anger into we're honking at the person in front of us. We're over here, we're in the fast lane, but the person in front of us is not going fast enough. And we're like, what? We're looking at them like they're stupid. They're going 70, and they're stupid.
Yeah. Right.
You're mad because I'm mad because I can't go at criminal speed.
Exactly. Need to get there.
What are you doing? And I'm like,
get out of my way.
And then I'm like, oh shit, I'm talking to myself.
Hold on, Rob, is that really your greatest fear in life, dying in a traffic accident? I did not know that.
Yeah,
wow, I did not know that, brother.
And the way you drive, that's interesting to me.
That's why I drive that way.
You're very
I'm in control when I drive that way.
Oh, all right.
So I drive a little fast. I drive a little aggressive, and that's just how I deal with my fear on the roadway. It's like I don't know if it's a trust thing. I don't know. It's just of all the fears that I have, that definitely is the one I'm like, dang.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My wife has the most irrational fear in history. I'll share for her. The most irrational fear. Her greatest fear, I'm not kidding. Her greatest fear is being lost in space.
I'd say you're living a pretty good life. If
yeah, you're living a pretty good life.
Right. How is that your greatest fear? Something that will never even be possible in your life.
Look, it's possible. Like, I say, like, there's a quick fix. Don't go to space.
True.
Now,
100%.
the other thing though, when the asteroid hits and blows Earth into all these little different pieces, that's when I worry about.
We're all lost in space.
Then we're all lost in space
Yeah,
at that point. I just.
I'm okay.
I'm okay. I don't think it's happening. Oh my god, no! But I can see that does look like, or to like lose air because of like the atmosphere. I'd be scared shitless to die in space.
Then say drowning then. You know, that's great. I forget what movie it was. It was a Sandra Bullock movie or something where they're lost in space. I think
it's called Lost in Space.
Is it called Lost in Space?
No. It's space. No, it's called space. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes, gravity.
She's like, I'm not
gravity.
We got like free passes or something to go see. I'm like, let's go to the movie. She's like, nope, not going to go see that movie. No. That's when she brought that out, and I'm thinking, this is the nuttiest. I told everybody, I'm like, listen, kids, come here, kids, come here. You gotta hear this. Your mom's crazy.
Hey, babe, let's go see Candyman. She's like, no, down. I'll go see Candyman.
Yeah, right.
I cannot do gravity. Can't do that.
That's what makes people interesting. That's what makes this journey so much fun. That's what makes being a human being amazing, is that everybody's different. Everybody has their own opinions and thoughts and fears. And if we communicate those, man, we'll understand each other a little bit better. But all right, I'm down with that. So I want to kind of wrap this up because you guys both are men of faith. So in asking that question, do you trust the guidance? And I want to have a follow-up question. Who do you look up to? Like, who are models for you as you progress forward? So I know there's two questions there, but just a curiosity from Rob to Malcolm and Ryan.
Ooh.
The model question got me.
Yeah, the model because the first part was
do you trust the guidance?
Do I trust the guidance?
So
I know you typically, like me, I'm trying to but I'm like, no, I'm gonna fight against it. Like where my inner voice tells me to go, I'm like, no, that's stupid.
I'm at full surrender to what Creator has for me. Like whatever God has, like I know that because it's like there's only so much control I can have of my life, right? Because the pandemic showed it's like at any point it could all just change so far beyond our control. So it's like I don't know if I've mastered surrender, right? There's still so much of like, I want this to happen and I want it to happen now. And it's like, it's not going to happen, right?
I think that's the journey, though. I think that's the journey of the human being, is figuring out how to just
what's that boundary with
what
just
is.
Let go and let God and kind of say, cool, I want this, and just handle it. As far as like who to look up to, that is that's hard because I feel like I draw inspiration. I feel like because like there's great things about my parents, and there's things about my parents that I'm like, I do not want to be like, right? And then there's like great things.
They serve examples both ways, for good and
for bad.
And different.
And the same goes with like any person. So I feel like I just take inspiration from just like new people. I feel like more than anything, I think kids are who I look like. I really look up to like my nieces and my nephews. I'm always like listening to just their purity. Because it's like, wow, this is like a mind completely devoid of programs. Like life has not hit them once. Like, and so they don't have the hard and like, well, that's how women always are. That's how men always are. That's how this is always is. It's always going to give you that, like they don't have that yet. Every day is new. Every day is fresh. And I feel like that's also a beautiful part of faith and surrender when you get there, is that every day is new. Every day is beautiful. You do have a chance to be born anew every single day. And it's like, there is abundance for you. There is the chance for you to get everything that you possibly want if you do believe. And it's like that childlike purity, that childlike innocence is that's what I'm looking up to. I'm gonna say the kids. I look up to the little ones. I don't know about TikTok, but I look up to the kids. I was like, I don't know about TikTok yet.
Right?
Yeah, it's a little bit performative, but I'm like, I like, but I like to see what the kids are dancing to as a DJ. I like that. So
absolutely,
that's research.
Ryan Hale, what are you thinking?
Yeah. To answer your first question, Rob, definitely. I trust the guidance, kind of like what Malcolm said, learning how to surrender. For me, I'm a big proponent, and I've been like this for a while now, is that all things work together. for good, and all things always work out the way that I can't talk. All things always work out the way they're supposed to. And what I've been trying to tell myself lately is that true faith is tested in the times of uncertainty. So like I said earlier, like this is the biggest faith journey I've ever been on. But I always tell myself, like, if I had faith in the past season or past time, like I've got to have faith now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, as far as
the point of this journey, right? To test
grow
your
in
faith
faith
and to make sure you accept it.
100%.
I don't know. Just an idea.
Yeah, hey, we talked about this. You're out of the money. As far as models, what I'm learning as I grow older, or right now, should I say, is how to have models in different areas of my life that I'm trying to grow in, for example. So like I want to be married one day. So I see people, whether at church or my parents or something like that, that I look up to as far as marriage goes, or I want to become like a better public speaker and be able to travel and speak at different events and things like that. So I've got people I look up in those areas. So I've got a lot of different models that, like, kind of like Malcolm said, that I draw inspiration from to be better. So yeah, that's
Mike, I want to ask you that question too, since we're here. I want to find out.
Go with the first one again, because I have a head injury, dude. I don't remember what you're asking.
Do you trust the process? Do you trust the greater being, the God, the whatever you want to call it, the universe is guiding you to a place?
Yes.
And then the second follow-up is, who are you looking up to? Who's your model to try to get there?
There's no choice but to trust the process. There really is. There's no other option. You can't. You can fight it all you want. I mean,
you won't win.
You might as well.
You will not.
Never.
You are fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people get confused, and Rob and I were actually talking about this yesterday, is that people get confused with faith and religion, because I think religion will let you down every single time. Faith will not. So God's not going to let you down. What we've created and segmented God to be is going to let you down. So I have to trust in the process, because it's a perfect process. Who I draw inspiration from is kind of odd, because my stepdad who raised me has been gone 20 years, and I still draw inspiration from him. I always feel like he's over my shoulder, and that is a horrible way to live at some point. Dad, cover your eyes, Dad.
Please.
It just popped up on a pop-up on the internet. I don't know what this is. And my dad was just a good man. It wasn't that he was a faith leader, a leader in the community. I mean, he had his demons. He had a scorching gambling problem, and I mean, we had issues, but he was just a good man, and that's who I pulled my my inspiration from.
I love all
but
that.
Isn't that beautiful? I think we do. At the end of the day, we draw inspiration from very real people, more than it's like no one's saying anymore. Oh, I draw inspiration from Gandhi, from Mother Teresa.
Right.
It's not realistic. It's like you want to model yourself after very real people, and then of course you can look at even your father's pitfalls. You can say, hey, maybe I don't want that. But that's, as you said, that's the beautiful part of the process, because there's a bunch of other things that I really want too, from my dad and from my mom and grandma and all that. Just 1,000%. I think that's so beautiful.
All right, Rob, we're going to throw it back on you, bud.
Straight up.
I am beginning to trust the process. I'm beginning to actually come into terms with my own faith, which I've avoided because I grew up Catholic, and my parents got divorced when I was 8. And I used to get ticked off at the church because we'd all go get communion, and my mother had to sit there in the pew because she was divorced. She couldn't get it. So I was like, what kind of church, what kind of religion treats someone like that because a marriage didn't work out?
Right.
Well, at the time, the Catholic Church did. So I was like, this is dumb. Even though I went confirmed, I did all that stuff because I had to.
Yeah.
So then I was like, screw this whole thing. Religion is stupid. God doesn't exist. But as I get older, I realize there's way more than just me, right? There's some connectedness that every living thing has. I mean, life sustains life for a reason, as maybe unfortunate as that is, because there's no other way for life to live except to eat other living things, really, and to live amongst other living things. But if you buy the concept that everything's always in motion, right? There's energy coming from Malcolm, from Ryan, from Mike, from me, that connects us all. And I will die on this hill that human beings are meant to collaborate. We're meant to unite, but we're also meant to rabble-rouse at the same time to get there. So my examples are, this is the one that always sticks out to me, is James Baldwin, the author who was so fundamental in shifting this country's consciousness on race.
Yeah.
So I loved how he rabble-roused. He is one of the most brilliant human beings to ever live, one of the smartest writers, one of the smartest speakers. So he's one that I want to model in the sense that moving humanity in a certain way. I know that's a monumental task, but why not? If James Baldwin could do it, why can't Rob Hunter at least try to do it? So that is sort of my answer in a nutshell. I went deep on y'all, man.
You did. I like that answer. I love James Baldwin.
Honestly, I was all for police terms, but honestly, it outdated. No, I don't even like. No, taking the claps away. Give him props, Rob. Give him the.
That was so half hour ago.
Yeah, that was so half hour ago. Right. We're on to something new.
Yeah.
Rob. Damn. Yes, Rob. No, 100%.
Well, and it started too. Like, a freshman year, I read a book by Richard Wright called Native Son.
Oh,
I think I was 13. And that's the only book I've ever read 3 times. In fact, my wife, her first gift she ever bought me was an original first print edition of that book sitting on my bookshelf right over there. So that is, and I put it in a specific spot because I want it to inspire me. But that led me into James Baldwin, and I was like, this guy, oh my goodness. And speaking of you guys, right, Malcolm and Ryan, James Baldwin, Richard Wright, like James Baldwin was very critical of that book because of how it portrays the main character. And digging into that, it's very interesting because I have a different opinion because of the impact it had on me. I have a different opinion than James Baldwin does.
Sure.
Because it opened my eyes up so much to, especially, when that was written in the 40s and how life was in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, much different than now, but there's still the same underpinnings that still plague us, that in order to be united, we have to push past with the quickness. So that is how, in talking about how much we don't like the government, that's what I want to abolish and redo. I want to start over. I'm like, all right, let's start this over again.
Rob,
actually respect people's freedoms.
Yes. Calm down, Rob.
I know.
You're going to say that on this iHeart radio station?
I know. Fire all the politicians and start over. And I'm going to elect Malcolm, Ryan, and Mike, and you guys do your thing.
It would be like when Dave Chappelle was president if I had anything to do with government. I don't think. You don't want it.
Might be exactly what we need, Malcolm.
Hey, look, Beyonce's birthday would be a different kind of national holiday.
I'm in with that.
Maybe.
The president of the United States is going to DJ an all Beyonce set from the White House South Lawn.
Come on.
Party. And everybody's gonna
National Day of Parties. We'll have it's going to be kind of communist the way we're going to mandate dance days. But mass days, no, you do not have to go to work. You have to just come outside and dance in a park with people. It's going to be a hard life. It's going to be a hard life, I was president. So just consider it.
It might be hard to watch more than it is hard to participate in.
Very
true. Guys out there doing this.
Everybody. You're like, oh, God, okay. Only the good dancers. Only the good dancers, please. Yeah. No, everyone else go to work. Everyone else go to work. We can't.
Well, we thought it was a great idea until we saw Mike and Rob dance, and then we were like, nope, they have to go to work. Yeah.
Nope. What did Will Smith say to Kevin James? No, you just stay right here.
Right there.
No Q-tip.
They have food there, no Q-tip. Just right. No lip bite. Just nope. Just right.
I can't. Yeah, I'm not going to participate in the day.
Nope. You can spectate.
Thank you. All right.
Dancers are spectators.
We'll live stream it for you, Mike.
But you can see why Malcolm, Alexander, and Ryan Hale are just amazing human beings. Go check out their podcast, Unfiltered Gems. Subscribe to it right now. They are going to challenge your thinking. They are going to show you who they really are, which is just 2 human beings filled with light and love of all other people, and wanting to do the same thing that I think Mike and I want to do. And maybe you do if you're listening to us right now, is just kind of move us in a direction where we can disagree, but still be human about it, and still get together and have a beer and have good conversations and say that, even though I never thought about it that way, that is a really good idea. I like that perspective. I think that's the goal here, right? Cohesion, if you will.
Yeah. And okay, we have some reviews to do though, because we do on the show, we do actually review these beers. Ryan, I want you to start with your water. How was that? Give that a scale of Mike. You're going to scale 1 to 10.
I appreciate you, Mike. This water suffice for the whole episode. Got me. Yeah. I would go with a 10 if I could.
A 10.
Wow.
That's fantastic water.
That's incredible. Thank you. That's absolutely incredible.
Malcolm, you're drinking out of a Stella Artois glass.
Yes, this Stella Artois.
But you actually have Modelo in there.
And honestly, look, I'll say it was a 10 because it's empty.
Dang, we're 210.
So it's a 10. Modelo has never done right. Actually, it might be a 9.5 because all it was missing was a lime.
Aha.
That's not Modelo. Members of the NFL. No,
what was that?
Lime. That's what we're. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's because we drink big beefy beers like this.
Yes, the IPA.
Take away from the.
How was it, boys? How was it?
Coachella. This is Valley Brewing Company. I don't know if it's Coachella Valley Brewing Company or just Valley Brewing Company's Coachella IPA, West Coast IPA. I actually wanted to be done with this about halfway through the podcast because it's really good. It's really easy to drink.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna give you a 9. I mean, I got nothing wrong. I got nothing wrong with this beer. I really like it. I wish it was available at my local grocery store because I'd buy more of it.
We are going to disagree, Rob.
Look at that.
I think they made an IPA to make an IPA. I think they just checked it off the list and said, okay, I think they mailed it in. This is it's honestly as basic of an IPA as you could possibly drink. The can art's fantastic.
Saying I'm basic?
I like it a lot.
What you're saying?
He just called you a basic.
A little basic. It's okay.
Wow.
It's I mean 6.
Ooh.
I might up it to 6.5 because of the can art. I think that's really just about it. And it's just a basic IPA and yawn.
Oh, it's a fair assessment. That's a fair assessment, Mike, and I respect it.
Yeah.
Well-crafted conversation over a beer is what we're doing here. So Coachella Valley Brewing Company, your IPA, let's see, that's a 9 and a 6. That's a 7.5, I think.
Yeah. Sure.
So one of us recommends you try it. The other doesn't. So if you're in Indio, California, or in Coachella, go check it out. Malcolm has been to Coachella. I don't think you've been. Have you been to Coachella, Ryan?
I have not.
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet.
Not yet.
I'll go when Drake goes. So probably.
I've been to Coachella, but not for Coachella.
I understand. I get that.
That sounds about right.
It counts.
I actually saw Inland Invasion there. It was a K-Rock. It was a K-Rock deal they did years and years ago. They had all 80s bands.
Wow.
Yeah, that had Duran Duran, Cure, Violent Femmes, like all old stuff. It's fantastic because I'm old. So you're like right and Malcolm are like, I think I know who Duran Duran is. But he said something out about a violent something. I don't know what he's talking about.
The 80s bands names were the best. It wasn't just
exactly.
Wale.
Nothing simple.
Yeah, different things there. Well, but that's what's different too. There's not a lot of bands now.
True.
There were a ton of bands. All the 8, like there was solo singers, but there was a ton of bands. And I think that's kind of what one of the differentiators in music now is tons of solo artists, maybe a couple rap groups here or there, maybe a couple of groups, but the dominant music is the singles, the Kanyes, the Drakes.
Yeah. Yep. That's very true. Very true.
But there are still a few bands doing God's work though. There still are a few bands.
There's a few.
I actually rely on Malcolm and Ryan to keep me in touch with new music.
I mean, the Free Nationals.
Malcolm and I used to do a podcast called The Sound Surfers, where we reviewed all these new albums. We've determined about 4 years too early because that's what everybody's doing now.
That's what everyone's doing now.
We were trend setting 4 years ago.
We were ahead of the curve because I'm over here like if I don't stick up for Corbin and Young Baby Lotion, James White, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Tame Impala. They're still killing it. We love a Dave Grohl. We love a Foo Fighter. I love a Duran Duran. I love a Weezer, R.I.P. Chester, Linkin Park. I don't know if Linkin Park tours anymore, but Linkin Park was selling out shows still.
The Free Nationals are a band, right?
Yes. Anderson .Paak's band, 100%. So that's a band, 1,000%. There's still a few, but we are not in the age of bands as much anymore. I think because now you have so many of the bedroom producers, a lot of the people that would have been band front runners are making everything themselves at home now with synthesized instruments, and then they need to hire a band to tour with them, but they don't have to really be. But you don't have to we're not the band anymore, right? It's like, hey, I wrote this guitar part. I just need you to play the guitar part. Here's the drums. I programmed the drums already. Just play the drums.
Who does Travis Barker drum for?
Blink 182.
Oh, that's Blink 182. Okay, guys. I was thinking Linkin Park for some reason, but no. Yeah. If so, that was actually my son's first concert. It was some random thing in San Diego at Petco.
Hell,
we were down there. We were actually there for a video gamers conference or something.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that they went over there and did that and watched that, and they did a pretty damn good show.
Blink 182, they're still legendary, man. They're still great. And I just saw I think I might have to go. It's gonna be Blink 182, Green Day, and one other of those like early 2000s kind of punks. It might have been like All American Rejects, but I'm like, that was like my angsty teenage heart in high school at one point. Like I was in all the rock bands, man. Like you could, I was there. Like I was just rocking out. Like what, Rob? We even covered Dookie on the Sound Surfers,
We
right?
did.
So
It
it's
was a
like,
Corbin
hell of
homework
an album.
assignment.
oh, Dookie's a great album.
Great
It's a great album. So yeah, no, I'm a rockhead a little bit.
Okay.
I love
and your sister's down there she's in the Sublime ranks.
Oh yes, Sublime with Rome.
The drummer's brother was my first boss.
No way.
So yeah, so we had a lot of time with Sublime down there.
Oh yeah, no. You mentioned San Diego, so I'm like you and all the ska bands and all the reggae acts where we're just canoodling, man. I know it.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
That's a big moment in the mid '90s. Those ska reggae bands. We had a couple of years of like that's it. That's the jam.
Oh yeah. Old No Doubt, old Gwen Stefani. You know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. See, look. Oh yeah. Like I
know. No, listen, I'm in tune with Gwen. I'm very in tune with Gwen Stefani. I'm not kidding. I was my kids.
This
used
is
to
what he was
watch
talking
The
about
Voice.
when he was like, "Dad, cover your eyes."
Mm-hmm. No, seriously, my kids used to watch The Voice. And there was one time where I look over and I see Blake Shelton do one of these. And she stood up and I said, "He's hitting that."
Yep.
And my wife got so mad. She's like, "No, there's no way that would no, come on, no." And I'm like,
That's the hit.
Months later. What happened?
I know what that looks like without clothes on. Look,
he was speaking volumes with his eyes. The lasers that were shooting out right at her tuchus. It was just
the tuchus. Yes, that will be Unfiltered Gems vocabulary that we have to adopt from the movement. We will cite Mike Russell every time I say it, but I like just in case of cursing, I'm gonna from now on like the woman's derriere will be referred to the tuchus. Going forward, period.
Mike Russell, the influencer, right there.
100%.
Go check out Malcolm and Ryan's podcast. It's called Unfiltered Gems. You're going to get more conversations like this. And at some point, we will have you guys back on, as this was such an awesome discussion. We would both love to do it again about any issue. So let's keep connecting on that. Until next time, here on the Brewmance.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.